Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey peeps, today we're going to take a look at the Cartoon Network crossover crisis deck building game from Cryptozoic. They're just daring you to say something about their long names. Go ahead, say something, I dare you. Okay, but okay, we'll play ball. Now, as you might have guessed already, if you're at all familiar with Cryptozoic and their deck builders, this is yet another entry in their Cerberus Engine series of games. These are deck building games that all have the same basic core mechanisms with some significant differences, but theoretically can all be mixed together because they have the same card backs. The primary example of this, the one that was the most popular in their very first one, was the DC Comics deck building game. I personally can attest that the Naruto and Street Fighter deck building games are also quite fun, and there's Lord of the Rings and hockey and a bunch of other ones I don't really care about. Now, what the Cartoon Network crossover one is, as the name implies, it's taking a bunch of popular franchises from the Cartoon Network's catalog of cartoon series from their inception, and original programming, not like old Hanna-Barbera stuff or anything like that, and taking those characters and pasting them on to the Cerberus engine. Let's just be honest about that. With some significant differences, though, as we'll go about in the overview, mainly because they're trying to make this one more family-friendly. There's a lot more activities in this set, and but you will see a lot of your, I guess potentially, especially if you're watching this show, favorite cartoon characters. Some of them not. For some reason they had some problems getting the licenses for certain shows, so you're not going to see the Powerpuff Girls, and you're not going to see some of like none of the Adult Swim stuff, anything like that. But you will see Steven Universe, which is a personal favorite of mine. Adventure Time, also a favorite of mine. Regular Show, which I never really got into. A show called Clarence, I've never even heard of. And some really old school ones like Dexter's Laboratory, Samurai Jack, which is coming back, I heard, by the way, and Johnny Bravo, which no one ever liked. So, with all of that being said, let me go ahead and give you a brief look, not at the core game, I'm not going to go over the rules again, but just at the new stuff that comes in this set, the new mechanisms, some of the new cards I'll show you. Then we're going to come back and I'll let you know what I think about all this.
The Cartoon Network crossover crisis deck building game is yet another in Cryptozoic's line of Cerberus Engine games. Theoretically, each of them is compatible with the others in the series, though each game has some significant differences from its siblings, and that's somewhat easier said than done for most cases. I will not be covering how to play the game, as it is the same core rules of every other Cerberus deck builder. But do let me explain some of those aforementioned differences, then show you some of the new cards and characters in detail. First, weaknesses are handled much differently. Not only are there seemingly many more ways to gain them in this game, but every weakness card is now different. When you have one in hand at the start of your turn, it must be the first card that you play, and then you must suffer its effect. For example, Short says you cannot play cards with a cost of 6 or greater that turn. Cowardice forces you to discard a card from your hand. Wounded makes you draw 4 cards instead of 5 at the end of your turn. On the plus side, weaknesses in this game do not count as -1 points. Also, regarding starting cards, punchies are just punches, but pratfalls, which take the place of vulnerabilities, actually do something now. When played, you can take a weakness from your discard pile and put it on the bottom of the weakness stack. Inside jokes take the place of kicks as a +2 power card that is always available. However, they are not worth a point now, and they have no type, unlike kicks, which were superpowers. Events are a brand new addition to the main deck, and also the biggest example of one of the most drastic changes in this game. When events enter the lineup at the start of your turn, you must immediately resolve them, then remove them from the lineup. They do not get replaced. Many of the events force you and often the other players to do some sort of wacky physical activity. If you fail in some way, you usually must take a weakness. For example, left arm twins makes your left arm do whatever the left arm of the player to your right's left arm does, or you take a weakness. Zoo Powers Go makes everyone act like a different zoo animal for 10 seconds. Rescue the Princess is actually one of the few subtle cards, giving you an extra card at the end of your turn for every female hero that you purchase. Hold Your Breath is exactly what it sounds like. Let's look over some other main deck cards before we get to the characters. All of the main types are here, but one substantial difference is that heroes and villains now have the male and female subtype, though I do appreciate that BMO remains gender neutral. Watch the PBS Idea channel episode on that, by the way. Gumball Watterson gives you +1 for each different type of card that you play. Mordecai and Rigby are exactly the same, and each give you a power, then let you play rock, paper, scissors with a foe, with the winner drawing a card. This is a distressingly common theme with all regular show cards, playing rock, paper, scissors. The inevitable Dee Dee lets you destroy equipment to gain power. Princess Bubblegum lets you fist bump, yes, literally fist bump, it's even described in the instruction manual, a foe, and that foe chooses to let you either draw or gain +3 power. Fist bumps are common amongst Adventure Time cards. For villains, Magic Man forces a foe to discard a weakness, but then you get +1 for every remaining card. Eustace Bag attacks and potentially makes a foe discard and gain a weakness. Mad Jack is somehow weaker than Eustace and just forces a weakness. Go figure. Amongst superpowers, Joy Virus lets you continue to draw cards as long as you don't match types. Friendship lets you fist bump as many foes as you like. Each one that you do fist bump gets to draw a card, but they give you +1 and you also draw a card. Irresistible lets you draw a card for each female that you play or have played. There is, of course, equipment. Jack's sword can defend, and then lets you draw a card and forces your foe to take a weakness. Card Wars cards makes you do a fist bump to a foe. They draw a card, and then you play one from their hand. And there are locations, of course. The Land of Ooh gives you +1 power each time you fist bump. Pop's Moon Palace lets you draw a card the first time you play a female. Since this is my show, and I'm a shill for Steven Universe, let's give some special attention to those cards because I said so. Garnet, Amethyst, Pearl, and Steven all give +2 for each gem you play or have played, with Steven also having a defense reaction that nets you 2 cards. Not too shabby. Gem Fusion lets you take 2 cards of up to cost 4 from your discard pile. Lapis Lazuli destroys a card in your hand or discard pile for each gem you play or have played. Onion is Onion. Oh, and he mimics another card that you've played, which works very nastily with the gems. For all the wackiness in the game, the new characters themselves are surprisingly mundane and similar to previous Cerberus characters. Steven Universe lets you look at the top card of your deck and either draw it or discard it when you play a superpower. Dexter gets +1 power for each equipment. Johnny Bravo, amusingly, must pay 1 more power to get female heroes and villains, but then he gets +2 power for each female that he actually plays. The Wattersons let you pay 4 power to gain the top card of the deck. Finn and Jake give you a discount on fist bump cards, and every time you fist bump a foe, you can discard a card and draw a card. And finally, Jack lets you draw a card for the first defense card you play each turn, and then lets you convert your pratfalls into defense cards, essentially. There's more characters in that, but those are the ones I wanted to cover. The Nemesis cards are also fairly standard, though a couple of group attacks force the players to do wacky things as well. Though if I may continue my Steven Universe hackery, the only one I'm actually going to talk about in detail is Jasper, who also counts as a gem when you play her after defeating her, and lets you draw a card for each gem that you play. And that is all the new stuff I care to cover in the Cartoon Network.
Now you'll notice if you've been keeping up with all like the Cryptozoic deck builder games and expansions that I review, that I rarely give bad reviews or even mixed reviews for some of them. I mean, I've been critical of like some mechanisms and things like that, like the Teen Titans set for DC Deck Builder, or the Crisis packs and how I don't like the Crisis mode. But for like the core games, I discerningly pick the ones that I want to review. I know I have no interest in the hockey Cerberus game. I know I have no interest in the Lord of the Rings ones. I like Lord of the Rings, but I'm not interested in the deck building game version of it. Come on. But I thought, Naruto, Street Fighter, DC, Cartoon Network, I'm pretty sure I'm going to like those, so I'm going to try them. And that's actually panned out pretty well so far, expansions notwithstanding. The Cartoon Network crossover deck building game with the obnoxious name is the one I'm probably the most conflicted about so far. Some aspects of this, let's take a step back. I love the fact that this exists because I love a lot of these Cartoon Network shows. I'm just happy to see a new kind of theme. And by the way, I'm happy that they wanted to go the extra mile and innovate it a bit and set it apart from its siblings, if you want to call it that, or cousins. The same reason why I like the Street Fighter game, because that was like really heavy on attack and this whole counterattack mechanism and special moves and cards underneath your character card. And Naruto, which had chakra and as a whole new type of currency in a sense, and all chakra points on your characters, those really changed the game in dramatic ways. And Cartoon Network does that as well, and I appreciate that. I just don't like at all how they chose to change it. And how they chose to change it was by having these wacky, slapstick, physical activities in the game. And at first you're like, that's kind of cute. And then you're like, okay, this is really aggravating, and I hope we never have to do it. Oh, now we have to do another thing. And that's what ends up happening. And I'm not sure what I hate worse. When an event comes out and says you have to keep your elbows on the table, or you have to mimic what your partner to your right is doing, or your left, and I'm not getting in my directions right. Or if you have to hold your breath, like really dumb stuff. That in and of itself is bad enough, but those only happen, it's 10 event cards that it's late, that you have to have in the deck. So that might happen not that often, you may not even see all of them. What's probably worse are the cards for regular show and Adventure Time make you do rock, paper, scissors, and fist bumping, respectively. Rock, paper, scissors especially being super annoying. I don't mind rock, paper, scissors in regular life when we just have to quickly determine, who goes first or something like that. When you have to do it over and over and over again as part of a card's ability in order to get something from it, otherwise that card is useless to you, kind of aggravating. So I hate that. The fist bumping thing with Adventure Time is irrelevant unless you have dicks in your gaming group who actually make you do it. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Some people I played with were like, okay, fine, I fist bump you, let me just do my thing. Other people were like, come on, you really got to fist bump me, and I hate that crap. Now, again, I have to look at this from the lens of this was meant for kids, I would guess, but come on. Knowing that this game already has a built-in audience of adults, or at least older teenagers, and people and going to old school cartoons for a lot of this, which means, again, adults at this point, you know that that's going to be the primary people that are playing it, or at least are going to be playing it with their families. And I can see but that's the thing, I don't even think kids would like that this much because it's just irritating. Or maybe I'm giving kids too much credit. But definitely the adults who would have to play it with those kids or with anyone else or with other adults, I think would be annoyed, and that's the reaction I got from most of the people that I played with. I'm really curious if people had different mileage with this because it was so annoying for all the rest of us. Things like you have to stand up until someone's, it goes around the table. Okay. It's just wasted time and wasted space on a card. Whereas I think they could have done some interesting things, like maybe dexterity games necessarily, not these like random just doing physical stuff. I don't know. I thought it was really, really dumb, and it almost sinks this game. Having said that, though, there are actually a lot of cards, like individual card abilities, the normal abilities in this game, that I like a lot. Yes, I am partial to Steven Universe as a show, but as it happens, the Steven Universe cards in this set are, maybe because the people who created this game had the most respect for that cartoon, made them the best cards in the game and super interesting, and I want to use them in other Cerberus deck builders. The gems compounding off of each other, even Onion, the really weird kid from the show, mimicking a card. I just thought they were great. Samurai Jack has really interesting things with defense. It's great. I mean, it really, and that's even more thematic. Same thing with the gems, where it makes sense that Jack is really good at defending and counterattacking and that kind of stuff. And the characters themselves are fine. Finn and Jake have a fist bumping thing, fine. But the rest of them are all normal characters that I would be perfectly happy shuffling together with the DC Comics characters, for instance, and just using them. Yeah, it completely breaks whatever tiny scraps of theme were left. Having Steven Universe fight side by side with Batman. But as card abilities go, they're fine and they're useful. And the Nemesis are fine for the most part as well. I would even consider mixing in some of them, especially like the gem that works with the other gems, and the holograms. No. And there's cards in the main deck that are perfectly fine and playable and actually very interesting. And that's why I'm conflicted about this. I hate all of the new wacky stuff that they tried to do with this set. Even how the weaknesses work is... And yeah, let me take a second and talk about the weaknesses. that had the potential to be more interesting than everything else, because those don't make you do wacky physical activities. Rather, they just hit you with a really negative thing on your turn, which is not always that debilitating, but it does make the weaknesses much more important and critical, even if they're not worth a negative point anymore, which I could see getting annoying. But at the other hand, I'm like, okay, weaknesses really, really matter, and you need to take them into account. So, boom, okay, I'm good, I'm on board. Weaknesses don't matter at all in this game. It is so easy to get rid of your weaknesses, whether it's through normal card destruction or the pratfalls, which you're kind of encouraged to get rid of every other punch now instead of your pratfalls, and then you just easily get rid of the weaknesses. Or sometimes a lot of the events, you might think like, well, you're going to get a ton of weaknesses for those events that make you do wacky physical things, right? No, those wacky physical things are just annoying. They're not hard to do, which means you're rarely going to get weaknesses for them. So the whole weakness mechanism and the effort they put into making them all unique is kind of irrelevant. That's what's sad about it. But the main deck cards are a lot of them are very interesting. I like that they put the male and female subtypes, and they should have more subtypes in this game for everything. I think that's a really cool idea. So that's where I'm conflicted. So many of the actual card mechanisms in this game are great. Not just good, they're great. And I want to use them. I want to put them into other games, which I never do, sadly. That's part of why I'm conflicted about it, because this might just sit here like a lump, because I'm not willing to play this game on its own by itself again. I will have to cannibalize it, take parts out of it, put it into something else, or I guess that's retrofitting it, because I don't want to do any of the wacky stuff again. But I'm curious what people think if they've played this with actual kids who may enjoy this, or if they were just annoyed by it. So, mixed bag here, but A for effort. That is the Cartoon Network crossover deck building game from Cryptozoic.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.